What flex layout different in flex and grid layout? CSS grid layout is a two-dimensional grid-based layout system with the rows and columns, making it easier to design web page without having to use floats and positioning like table. But the CSS Flexbox offers a one-dimensional layout. It is helpful in allocating and aligning the space among items in a container made of grid. It work with all kind of display device and screen size. What is a box model and what are the different elements of box model? The CSS box model is basically a box that is made up of margins, borders, padding and the actual content. The different elements of a box model are content of the element such as text, an image or a video player. It has also dimensionalized wide background color or background image, etc. What is a hover effect? What is the purpose of active class? Or what is pseudo class? What is a hover effect? Hover effect sense the appearance of an element of the graphical interface. It color or shape sense when the mouse hover over it, even if it is not selected. What the purpose of active class? Active class is usually used to highlight any active content from a selection, mostly in navigation. What are the different type of selectors in CSS, or different between class selector from ID selector? There are different type of selector in CSS such as CSS element selector, CSS ID selector, CSS class selector, CSS universe selector, CSS group selector. Different between ID selector and class selector. Difference between ID and class attribute. Class selector can apply to multiple elements. ID is unique on a page and applies to only one element. What is CSS specificity? If there are two or more CSS rules that refer to the same element, the selector with the highest specificity value will be accepted and will be applied to the HTML element. What is a pseudo element? Give an example of pseudo element. A CSS pseudo element is used to style specified parts of an element. For example of pseudo element, it can be used to style the first letter or line of an element, insert content before or after the content of an element. Difference between transition and transform. The difference between CSS transform and CSS transition. The transform property in CSS moves or modifies the appearance of an element, whereas the transition property seamlessly and gently transition the element from one state to another.